moved into our game of jobs and homes. And I'm sorry, I can send these slides to you all too. I know there's a lot of draft information in here, but I can share them as well. So this was an opportunity. We put people around a table. Most of them didn't know each other.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Kent City Council special meeting for Tuesday, September 26th. If you could all please rise and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kim, could you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mayor Ralph.
Here.
Council President Boyce. Councilmember Fincher.
Here.
Councilmember Kaur.
Here.
Councilmember Larmer.
Here.
Councilmember Michaud.
Here.
Councilmember Thomas. Councilmember Troutner.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kim. Okay, this evening, the item on our agenda is the transmission of the mid-biennium budget adjustments. So I'm going to move from here to down there. We'll go ahead and do the presentation, close this meeting, and then council at 5:30 will convene back for workshop for presentation from Paula, and then any questions that you may have this evening. Always feels a little strange being on this side of the dais. Good evening, Council. I am pleased to present the proposed 2024 mid-biennium budget adjustment this evening. The Council adopted the original 23-24 biennial budget in November of 22. Feels like a lifetime ago, but just coming up on a year. That budget process represented continued collaboration between the Council, all of our city departments, and our community members. I firmly believe, as I know you all do, that the budget is a roadmap for our values and what we believe as an organization. That's why I am grateful that we as city leaders were able to come together with those shared values that centered around benefiting our residents and our business owners, as well as being fiscally responsible. While constructing the 23-24 biennial budget, the impacts of inflation played a major role in our decision-making process. With the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, CPIW, for Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue being at 9.5% last June, we knew that growth in expenditures was going to be imminent. The resulting increase would exacerbate our structural imbalance. We've had lots of conversations about that over the years because we know that labor contracts are tied to that, in addition to just what things cost, as we saw inflation hitting that near 10% level. Knowing inflation was going to be significant and played a huge piece in our 23-24 biennial budget, departments were asked to maintain a status quo budget for that biennium, as we had all collectively agreed on earlier that year. Any budget requests had to come with a revenue stream or an expenditure reduction to support it. This proposed mid-biennium budget continues to honor that process and remains status quo. So any of the things that we are going to talk about tonight come with either a revenue stream or a reduction. A mid-biennium budget adjustment provides an opportunity to account for unforeseen changes in fiscal events which have occurred since the adoption of the biennial budget. It's typically not a time to bring forward new initiatives or significantly change levels of service across departments, but it does provide us an opportunity to review and update initial forecasts, solidify those numbers that we were making for projections at this time last year. We've completed that review, and budgets were refined to reflect current trends. So you'll hear about where we saw good things, decreases in expenditures, increases in revenues. The mid-biennial budget adjustment includes updated revenue forecasts, adjustments to salaries and benefits to align with the CPIW and other known factors, some additional operating expenditures, including 7.25 full-time equivalent employees and 3 term limited positions. I will explain where that funding is coming from, not new, coming out of the general fund. Increased insurance costs. You've all heard presentations about what our insurance landscape looks like currently. Modifications to cost allocations, and then some investment in capital. Of the total $443.85 million budget, $121.89 million is allocated to the general fund. The general fund will see a $2.5 million or 2.1% increase in expenditures from the adopted budget. The adopted budget had originally planned to use nearly $3.1 million of the general fund balance, but with revenue increases of $4.6 million, again, in that review process to align with current trends, the general fund will only need to use about $1 million of fund balance instead of that 3.1. So that is positive news. All right, let's go into some of the high-level changes by department. So the first one is public safety. The Kent Police Department is on the forefront of transparency and accountability in law enforcement. We have been making strides in that area for a very long time. With funding revenues from the newly approved red light camera installations, in-car cameras will be installed in patrol vehicles, resulting in additional transparency. These cameras will enhance officer and public safety as well as provide for greater investigative tools for filing of cases. The in-car cameras will, however, increase the workload. As you can imagine, more camera footage, so it's going to take additional resources for both the legal department and the city clerk's office. So this budget does include a new prosecutor and a public disclosure analyst, which will start mid-year. So we'll be working through a pilot process and looking at those cameras coming on later in '24. These new positions will be funded out of red light camera revenue. So there's the funding stream for those positions. Changes in policing have been putting increasing demands on the resources of our department. With historically high crime and staffing challenges, we've arrived at a pivotal point to ensure the effectiveness of police command staff to lead our department. This budget adjustment restores the vacant position of deputy chief, which will provide a much-needed balance of workload at the executive level in the police department, ensuring adequate resources are dedicated to oversight, management, planning, and implementation of police operations. Also included in this budget is $100,000 for investigative technology, which will assist the detectives and their traffic unit. This technology allows for real-time viewing of footage from our drones, resulting in greater situational awareness for major incidents, faster review times by detectives, and automatic transmission of video footage for both storage and use. We've also included a proposal to purchase a fully functioning crime scene van, set up with computers, other equipment, refrigeration, power generation, etc. That crime scene van will be paid for using funding that was provided by the legislature in 2021. So we've got some funding there for that. Also included in this budget is use of red light camera revenue to update the cell phones for all of our officers. We have a lot of new technology that is necessary for them to perform their duties, and we need to make sure that they've got adequate equipment to handle that technology. Moving into the municipal court. The criminal justice system traditionally seeks to reduce crime first by rehabilitation and then by punishment. While fines and jail can be effective and sometimes necessary deterrents, they don't address the problems that many people struggle with that might lead them to be committing those crimes. So community court is what comes into play there. These problems can include substance use disorder or mental health challenges. While not everyone committing crime is dealing with these challenges, those that do need resources, and community court is an answer that we have implemented here in the city of Kent. Our community court holds participants accountable while offering resources to help support and establish stability in their lives. The municipal court does have a court program which was fully funded between a state grant and ARPA funds. The opioid settlement, as we've been talking about that over the last couple of years, is now available to support that program. It feels like a very reasonable use for that funding. So a key factor in ensuring that people make those connections and have that follow-up that's needed is proper staffing for the program. So this budget adjustment will increase a resource coordinator position from part-time to full-time, and that position will help connect people to resources. Funding for this position will be offset by a reduction to the court's temporary employee budget. I think a very necessary thing to ensure the success of that program. All right, parks, recreation, facilities, community services. So safety and security of our city facilities has been at the forefront of our minds as we've continued to see theft and vandalism at city facilities. A project for access control upgrades is currently underway, focusing on adding new systems to the Kent Commons, Senior Center, driving range, and the golf course. These locations currently lack an updated access control system. So this budget expands the project by $200,000 to upgrade security at other city facilities, including Centennial Center, our city shops, municipal court, and corrections. Not only has the project expanded locations, but the scope of the project will expand to become a more complete security upgrade, incorporating cameras and alarms as indicated. Important to protect those city facilities and assets through this program. On our parks facilities, so our parks have seen increasing use and some challenges over the last couple of years, some positive use, some not so positive use. That also requires that our delivery of service model evolves. So with this budget adjustment, the Parks Department will explore a one-time pilot program in which it will contract with a security firm to provide support to high-use park locations such as Lake Meridian, Van Dorn's Landing, Hogan, and West Fenwick, and also to support events during the peak season. So through enhanced management of these locations, we will be proactively providing a safer, more accessible gathering space for the public. Again, reassuring folks that, you know, our parks are the place that they want to be and make sure that we've got positive uses going on. Senior Center. In 2019, the city was awarded $1.4 million from King County Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services Levy, or VSHSL, for 2019 through 2023. Funding from that levy enabled the Senior Activity Center to add a program coordinator and a program assistant. The renewal of this levy was approved back in August. King County voters said yes to that renewal, but there's going to be a gap in that funding. So this budget adjustment includes gap funding for those two positions that were initially funded through the levy so that we can maintain our current staffing levels until we are awarded that funding through the Vets and Human Services levy. Final thing on facilities, the City of Kent is required by law to implement a stormwater management program. So we typically think of this as being a public works consideration, but parks handles city facilities, and city facilities are required to maintain those same standards. So this budget does include funding to support this program for city parks and other facilities. That's a newer requirement that we're working through, and will require some funding. Good segue into the public works realm. We have all seen an increased growth and expansion in our traffic signals deployed throughout the city. So think stop lights, the rapid flashing beacons at crosswalks, all of those kinds of things. But we've also continued to see the impact of wire theft and vandalism of these facilities. So the combination of both that expanding infrastructure and that increased theft and vandalism has resulted in a pretty significant strain on maintenance and repair resources. Our signal team is small but mighty, and they are working to their limits. So this budget does include the addition of one traffic signal technician to address those ongoing needs. Another place where Public Works is looking to add some funding. City standards require capital projects and private developments alike to install landscaping in the right-of-ways as an enhancement to streetscapes. I think it's something that we all support. We want a beautiful city. Along with all of that, though, requires an additional level of maintenance. So it's not your traditional line trimmers and sort of that more brute force type of maintenance. It really takes a more hands-on approach and things that can't just be done with the sidearm mower. So we're looking that more on our hands-on approach to maintaining these sites does take additional resources. We've got several locations that the city has that are currently under warranty phases, and that means that the contractor is taking care of them. They will be returning to the city's care, and so we are going to need some additional staff to maintain those areas. The budget reallocates a portion of the street tree budget and a reduction in the contractor budget to add 2 new maintenance workers to perform this specialized landscaping on an ongoing basis. Additionally, planning. We're going to talk a little bit about succession planning, something that the council has talked about. I know something very near and dear to Council President Boyce's heart. We need to figure out what it looks like as we plan for retirements. And so in our water quality source and supply group, we know we've got some pretty significant upcoming retirements. The ongoing training, state certification requirements, and level of expertise to operate our water system is critical. And in preparation for these upcoming retirements, this budget includes the addition of 1 term-limited maintenance worker who will be trained in operating our city's drinking water system. The same holds true at the management level. Allowing for the overlap with the current incumbent prior to retirement will help with the transition of knowledge needed to successfully operate our complex infrastructure system. Therefore, this budget adjustment includes the addition of a term-limited utility site and process control manager, and these positions will be funded from the water utility. Finally, in Public Works, over the last couple of years, the city has been analyzing the funding and allocation model of our fleet fund. The next step in this process is to implement a fleet key box system, which will gather data needed to better analyze the utilization of all of our city vehicles in the fleet and construction equipment. So this system will automate the motor pool vehicle reservations, automate billing and reporting, and provide data to help us right-size our fleet system and track things. We'll install one key box system down at the shops, and one will be located here at the Centennial Center for the checkout of those fleet vehicles. Moving into economic and community development, during the 2023 legislative session, over 20 bills were passed that focus on planning, housing, affordability, and other land use issues. We have had a lot of conversation about the complexity of the bills that came out of the legislature last session in this realm. These bills have significantly impacted the scope of the required comprehensive plan update, and we have got to get that update done by 2024 in order to make the PSRC certification process that comes in 25. This budget adjustment will include a one-year term-limited temporary planner to assist in our small but mighty two-person long-term planning division to help us update that comprehensive plan, implement the new housing legislation, and review our downtown sub-area plan, which again are all necessary for the PSRC certification. This position will be funded through grant revenue. So we've got that funding source again behind that position. Moving into human resources. In the spring of 2020, due to anticipated revenue losses as a result of COVID-19, remember that major cutting exercise that we did eliminate several positions here at the city. One of those positions was the administrative assistant in the Human Resources Department. This budget adjustment will restore that position, and in addition, it will convert a term-limited benefits analyst to a permanent position. We will be taking and allocating a portion of the benefits team to the Health and Wellness Fund because that is where their job duties lie, and those costs of that transfer will then fund these additional positions in HR. Moving into information technology, during the 23-24 biennium budget, funding was allocated to replace desktop computers and police mobile data computers, or MDCs. This budget, mid-biennium budget, allocates an additional $95,000 towards those efforts. Maintenance contracts and digital subscriptions were also adjusted to reflect current costs. Again, inflation, everything continues. We see an increase in all of these things in our subscriptions as well. An additional $351,000 will be allocated to various technology projects to include a redesign of our intranet and migration of the city's legacy city space to SharePoint. I don't know how often you are in our current intranet, but it is very much outdated and not very functional. So we're proposing that this project be done in the upcoming year. We're also asking for a web application firewall implementation to reduce the attack surface in our externally facing infrastructure that directly supports citizens and businesses, and an eConnect replacement system providing a best-in-class service software designed to deliver high-quality communications to the City of Kent residents. It's a program that I'm really excited about that'll allow us to much better target our communication with our residents and businesses. In conclusion, although this mid-biennium budget is a mid-biennium budget adjustment, we continue to be mindful of the things ahead. We still have that structural imbalance. We still have those ongoing issues with revenues and expenditures outpacing revenues. We know that we have work to do in the upcoming biennial budget as we continue to navigate all of those things. This adjustment reflects balancing the service delivery needs of our residents, our businesses, and departments while considering the impact on future budgets. So not setting ourselves up to have to be continuously making in a cut mode, right? We want to make sure we're continuing that responsible spending. One thing I do want to put in here before we end, though, is outside of the mid-biennium budget process, I do think it's important to note that we do have some unfinished business, some things that we are just flat out unable to fund. Crime is on the rise and continues to impact our lives. While we are all and have been very vocally supportive of police accountability measures, this council has also supported our legislature as it's taken to steps to restore tools and reasonable enforcement techniques that allow our police to effectively perform its public safety function. This council has made unanimous decisions to help the police department bring up our staffing levels, something that I think we can all be proud of. However, as we all know, Kent has fewer officers per capita than almost any other city in Washington, and Washington has fewer officers per capita than all other states in the nation. Thus, even at a fully budgeted staff, Kent's numbers, police officers, continue to be extremely low. We are all feeling the impacts. I know that you guys are getting those emails and hearing from our residents around police staffing. That means that we have work to do. In the upcoming months, we plan to work with our state legislature to pass laws that would allow Washington cities access to local funding options to add officers, and we are calling on all cities to support these efforts. Stay tuned, more to come on that front as we start working through our legislative agenda. So with that, I respectfully transmit the mid-biennium budget adjustments to the City Council for consideration. This document is a representation of the collaborative efforts of city leadership, council, city staff, and the Kent community, and holds true to our agreed upon commitment of a status quo budget. I want to say thank you to all of our directors, department heads, and city staff, our amazing budget team that has worked so hard to put this all together. And with that, that's the end of the transmission. Thank you all for the time. Okay, with that, the special council meeting for Tuesday, September 26th is adjourned, and council will reconvene in workshop at 5:30.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Kent City Council special workshop this evening. It is Tuesday, September 26th, and we are going to get started with one item that we have. It is our 2024 mid-biennium budget adjustment conversation, so I'm going to welcome Paula.
Member Troutner, Mayor Ralph, members of City Council. Exciting to be here again. It just seems like we were here not that long ago, but today we're going to talk about the 2024 mid-biennium budget adjustment. And I know Mayor Ralph just gave her presentation, so you do have a high level of what's going on. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this and give you a few numbers. Overall, we're going to talk about what adjustments happened on a citywide basis. We'll look at what the proposed revenues and expenditures look like. We'll talk a bit about what the baseline budget adjustments were. There's things that we become aware of that we do have to modify. We'll talk a little bit about revenues and expenditures within the general fund, the operating requests and capital requests, our timeline, and then we'll be happy to take questions. If you do have questions along the way, please feel free to stop me as well. Overall, with this budget amendment, we're seeing $19.2 million in budget adjustments citywide. Of that, $2.55 million of that is within the general fund. There's increases to our special revenue funds at nearly $5.5 million. Capital projects funds are going to see just over a $500,000 increase. Our enterprise funds will see an increase of $6.5 million. Internal service funds at $4 million. And debt service, hardly worth mentioning. It'll be a slight decrease, and it's because we are having to adjust their cost allocations, which you're going to hear a little bit more about as we move forward through this. So overall, when we look at the 2024 proposed budget, revenues are totaling $408.8 million. Of that, $120.8 million is within the general fund. The expenditure side of the budget is at $443.8 million for the entire city. The general fund is at $121.9 million. I know I've given you a really high-level look at where what we're looking at, but we'll go into more detail, so not to worry here. You can see what is making up some of these numbers. So the first thing we did when we started looking at this budget was starting to look at some of the baseline adjustments that need to be done. So we began reviewing all of our various revenues throughout the city and then also our expenditure side. So the items that really had impact citywide was our property tax. We are looking at increasing property tax by $300,000. Of that, $102,000 would be within the general fund and $200,000 within criminal justice. Really, this is just an adjustment to recognize the construction that has been happening, so we're able to adjust that. That is also aligning closer with what we are receiving in. We've continued to see growth in our sales tax revenues. In fact, we have increased sales tax citywide by $1.16 million. Of that, over $1 million of that is within the general fund. We have continued to see growth in sales tax. I think that you can recall from Michelle's monthly reports. It is coming in over budget. We have been very conservative in the amount that we're budgeting. We don't want to over anticipate our revenues and then all of a sudden have a shift in that. So taking a conservative approach, we have increased that. That will also impact the criminal justice fund by about $103,000 as well. Our external taxes, we're seeing increases in electric, garbage, and gas. So there's been an adjustment to those external utility taxes by $1.3 million. But that's offset by reductions to our external utility taxes for telephone and cable. We all know that we've been hearing about this. I think every time I come to the podium, we continue to bring those revenues down as more and more people are changing how they're using their phone services and their streaming services. So that reduction is for $216,000, and it does hit the general fund as well as a reduction to street and youth teen. Our internal utility taxes, also, we're seeing increases in that. We had increased rates based on CPI. So those revenues, we were pretty conservative coming into the budget. So we're just really realigning them to what we're experiencing for those utility taxes. So that's an increase of $848,000, of which $817,000 is within the general fund. Interest income, we went through a period of time where interest rates were pretty low, and we all know that we've seen interest rates continue to grow, and as a result, so has our interest income. So this budget has interest income increase of nearly $2.3 million, of which $421,000 is within the general fund. All of these things are important for you to know because we're going to talk about what this is really meaning for our general fund revenue. So bear with me as we walk through all of this. The MRSC provides us with a book, which is the budget suggestions, where they kind of give us an outline based on various factors on what we can anticipate for state shared revenues. So you're going to see some of the adjustments that we have for state shared revenues is reflective of what information was provided to us in that book. The fire insurance premium tax is increased by $51,000 and the motor vehicle excise tax by about $25,000. We are seeing a decrease, however, in our criminal justice assistance at $13,500, fuel tax at $54,000, and liquor excise tax and board profits for a reduction of $74,500. So that's kind of the look at our revenues that we have. Now the expenditure side of the house. Cost of living increase. We know that CPIW in 2023 came in at 9.5%. And then now for the upcoming budget, we're looking at CPIW of 4.5%. When the budget was established for 2023-24, two of our union contracts weren't settled, our AFSCME contracts and our Teamster contract. So when the budget was prepared, we went with the maximum amount of CPI, our COLA adjustment for them. We did recognize that even 23 was low, so we had to adjust for the impacts of 2023 into the 24 budget as well as the 2024 budget. In the end, that was a $3.9 million adjustment to the cost of living salaries for employees. We are seeing a reduction in our medical rate of $1 million. We had initially budgeted a 5% increase to our self-insurance healthcare plan. That increase is going to be zero, so we have removed the extra costs related to that, as that fund is healthy. The central cost allocation, so HR, finance, admin, law, our costs are allocated out to the various funds that we serve. So each year, we end up looking back 2 years and have to make an adjustment for that cost allocation. The cost allocation, although for the city overall nets zero, for the general fund, it does have a budgetary impact because of the underspending that has gone on. We're not going to be able to allocate out as much in 2024 as we had originally hoped. So it will have a budgetary impact to the general fund of $276,000. There's been allocations to utility clearing, engineering, facilities, GIS, IT. All of those allocations have been adjusted based on changes in salaries and what that might look like. Many of those end up with a net zero to the overall budget, just impacts to various funds. But the liability insurance, the workers' comp insurance, and the property tax insurance, those ones all did increase. There's been a lot of discussion about the impacts of our insurance on our insurance funds. The liability insurance allocation increased by $498,000. The workers' comp allocation increased by $339,000, and the property tax insurance, or not tax, property insurance increased by $412,000. Those had varying effects on different funds depending on their factors of allocation. Many times it has to do with their experience, department experience, and the number of FTEs. I just spoke a little bit about this, but this had some of the assumptions that were in the 24 adopted budget and what the 2024 biennial budget factors really are. So taking AFSCME COLAs from 4% to 4.5%, Teamsters from 3.5% to 4.5%. Healthcare plan, we're not going to have an increase there. There's been some adjustments to our retirement. And then also the allocations that I was just chatting with you about a moment ago. So what does this mean for the overall budget? So the general fund revenues are going to increase by nearly $4.6 million. Much of that has to do with the taxes that I just shared with you, $3.1 million is increases in the various taxes. There were also increases in other areas and a decrease in some, increase in licenses and permits, fines and forfeitures, miscellaneous, that's where our interest income goes, so that's there, and then also adjustments to our transfers in. We did have a reduction to the intergovernmental of $178,000, and that has to do with some of those state shared revenues that I mentioned, and also some court and interlocal jail services where we were engaged with another city for a contract, and those revenues now have been discontinued because the city moved to another agency for those services. Looking at the expenditures, the original budget adopted $119.3 million. There are additions of $1.66 million and baseline adjustments of $885,000. The additions we'll talk about a little bit more. I'll kind of go into more of those details. It won't be just for the general fund, but you'll get a great idea of what makes up those numbers. But the baseline adjustments have to do with exactly what I just chatted about, kind of in detail on some of those other pages. But the end result, an adjustment of $885,000. So when you look at the general fund, the adopted budget originally had slated to use $3.1 million of fund balance. With the revenue increases that we're seeing and the adjustments to expenditures, and although it was an increase, the use of fund balance is looking to be $1 million versus the original $3.1 million. So I'm going to go through and talk a little bit about the operating ads. So to this budget, there is a resource coordinator at the court that currently is budgeted at 3/4 time. That position will go to full time. What you're going to see as you're looking at these slides, anywhere where you see a dollar amount and there's an asterisk after it, that means there's no budgetary impact. There is a net zero. So they're offsetting the cost of this position by reducing the expenditures of their temp budget. Economic and Community Development has a 1-year term limited position to work with the 2-person planning team to be able to work on that comp plan. That is in the Capital Projects Fund. The cost of that's $125,000, but that is being covered by a grant, so that's already encompassed in the project that's already established. So that technically is a net zero as well. The Human Resources Department will add a 1.0 FTE and then convert a TLT, a term limited position of an HR analyst, to permanent. Currently, that position is funded through ARPA. And so you don't see any increase truly to the budget because it's already in the budget. It was actually slated through 26 or 25, excuse me. And then the admin position also won't have an impact to the general fund. Both of those positions will be covered by an allocation of our benefits team to our health and wellness fund, the health and wellness fund that they support. So that will be more reflective of the function that they are doing. Information technology had two projects that were already established in the budget. That was a computer refresh and an MDC refresh. This will be adding additional dollars to those budgets, about $95,000 to those budgets, in order to ensure they have enough to finish their endeavor with them. There are also some adjustments for a variety of maintenance contracts and digital subscriptions. As you can imagine, those things do change year over year based on various factors. So there's an additional budget of $280,000. For the police department, there's the addition of the deputy chief position, the in-car cameras program, in which there'll be two positions. One is a prosecutor and one is a public disclosure analyst, to be able to support that program. Those two positions will not be starting until the mid part of, at least the budget is established for them to start the mid part of next year. In addition, there is investigative technology that the police department would be added for the police department, and upgrades to their cell phones. In addition, there's the crime scene van that is there that would be used, or there is already a budget established under a project for the legislative revenue, so technically there is zero budget impact, but they will be expending those dollars for the purchase of that van. Moving on to parks, the stormwater management program would require $147,000, but there's going to be funding a little bit from the general fund and some from our facilities fund. $50,000 is going to be the ongoing cost of this program within the general fund, and $12,000 out of the facilities fund. There will be some one-time costs of $55,000 from the general fund and $30,000 from the facilities fund. The Parks Department will also be looking at contracting with the security services firm to help add additional security to their parks, those parks that are in high use, and also during peak season, events during their peak season. And then some gap funding for the two positions that are currently funded through the King County levy. And so this will be just until those dollars come in. For our Public Works Department, there will be an addition of a transportation signal technician that will be funded through a reduction in contractor services. And then that same holds true for the landscape maintenance crew, adding 2 new people. And then there's 2 term limited positions. One is a maintenance worker 2, and the other is a utility manager. Those will help with the succession plan for our various utilities. And then finally, the fleet key box system, which will be funded out of the fleet fund for $69,000. Moving on to our capital additions, we really don't have a lot to talk about here. There are security upgrades for our city's facilities for $200,000. This is going to be in addition to a project they already have going on, to be able to expand that project and to other various areas, city facilities. And then there are 3 IT projects: the web application firewall implementation, the intranet redesign, and the eConnect replacement. The eConnect replacement is a project that is going to be funded out of the one of our life cycle funds. So it's going to be really just moving that life cycle budget into a project. So ultimately there will be a net zero for that item as well. So when we start looking at the timeline, coming up next week, we're going to have another budget workshop. This will be a great opportunity for answering questions if you guys do have questions on the budget. In fact, I'll put a plug for this now and I'll do it again in a little bit. But council, if you do have questions about the budget that you, as you walk away and are looking at it, please send an email to me, to Pat Fitzpatrick and Michelle Ferguson, and we will log those questions and we can be able to come back and speak to those at that workshop. At the council meeting on the 3rd, there'll be a public hearing on the capital improvement plan for 2024 through 2029. October 17th, that will be our final workshop on the budget, hopefully. And then we'll have our council meeting, and this is where we'll have the public hearing on the 2024 property tax levy, the 2024 mid-biennium budget adjustment, and the capital improvement plan. It's our intent on November 7th to bring to the Committee of the Whole the budget review and recommendation, and then finally on the 21st to be able to approve the budget at the council meeting, adopt the budget at the council meeting. And that is the end of my presentation, and I would be happy to answer questions for you. If you need me to help point you to the right spot in the budget book, I'd be happy to help with that, since I failed to mention page numbers as I went along.
After the mayor's presentation previously, and then with this, everything is very straightforward, seems very clear, very well put together. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions from any of my colleagues? Councilmember Kaur.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Paula, for this presentation. Just a couple of questions just off top of my mind. And thank you for putting all this together, and thank you, Mayor. For the council increase, is that due to our increase in our salaries this year?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second one was the stormwater for city facilities increase. Is it because we're moving funding, or what is the reason?
No, so Public Works has always had it's NDPES, NPDES.
Yeah.
So Public Works has always had to manage their infrastructure and be in alignment with that. Now, this has been made aware that Parks is going to have to do the same thing for their infrastructure. I won't be able to speak as well to it.
So were we not doing it for our parks before, or is this because it's a new requirement, or?
Yeah, Yes. Thank
Okay.
you. I could try my best to speak to that, but I'm not sure that I could do it justice.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Fincher.
I believe it's similar to what the presentation we heard in Public Works, so it's a continuation of that over for just still fulfilling those requirements that we have. So it's like we don't have a choice. We have to do this to meet and stay in the law.
All right, Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you. Thank you, and yeah, great job, Paula and team. Question on the mayor's summary on the parks and facilities. So the veterans levy funding for that gap funding, will we see that money once we're awarded it go back into the budget?
Yes, we will. If they will retro it back, then we'll be able to restore that in the budget, and that's the one piece that we'll have to wait to see unless somebody has more updated information than I have at this moment.
Okay.
I continue to make the case that it's a continuation, therefore that funding should continue on without a gap. So we're hoping, and that's the request, that then it just is to fill in the middle.
Okay, great. And then the source for the other parks, the access control system and the security implement, what is the funding source for those?
Hold on just a moment. So the access control, that is our capital resources, or that is our capital resources fund, and the capital resources fund had additional, if you recall, last year we received in far more REAP money than we had anticipated receiving, so we did have extra dollars available for that.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Fincher, did you have any other questions?
I just wanted some clarity on the security programs for the park. So will it be someone who would be there walking around? Will they drive around to different parks? Will they answer calls?
Contracting with a company that would provide that extra support and security. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, but still, would they be stationed at these parks full-time or just roving?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Councilmember Troutner. Thank you so much, Paula. Can you tell me where to find the Public Works additions in the book?
Yes,
And
just a
then
second.
I have a question about how those temporary positions are going to help with succession.
Okay, so I can,
Yeah, and high level, it's that overlap time so that we've got the ability to train somebody up and get them up to speed. Our water system is extremely complex, as you are, I'm sure, very aware. So it's the ability to have some of that overlap and to train people and get the certifications, all of those things, and up to speed.
and page 45.
All right. Councilmember Larmer, did you have another question?
Sorry, no.
All right.
Thank you.
So I see everyone kind of looking through their books. Any other questions?
I have one.
Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you. For the cars, the in-car cameras, will this outfit all of the cars at one time, or will it be done in phases like the body-worn cameras were?
We're starting with a pilot currently, so we don't have
That's
a lot of
right.
answers on sort of timing, and it's going to depend on equipment availability, how quickly we can get them upfitted, and a variety of things. So we'll be coming back to you probably sometime middle of next year with additional information.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Councilmember Kaur.
Thank you, Madam Chair, again. Just a kind of clarification. The salaries you see for the position includes benefits and everything else, right? This is not just a salary that person is going to receive. Just for the clarification of, because
Yes, that is
sometimes when people
correct.
see
No,
that,
yeah, that
they
is
look
not
at
just the
like,
salary.
that
That
person is
includes-
making.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you for the clarification on that. That does include all the benefits, and benefits doesn't necessarily mean a benefit to the employee. Benefit also means the taxes that the city has to pay as an employer. So it's the city share of the city share of the taxes as well. So it's yes, you're correct. It's both salaries and benefits.
Thank you.
Good question. All right. Any other questions?
And as a reminder, you're always welcome to email those questions to us. I encourage you to include me, Pat Fitzpatrick, and Michelle Ferguson on it, just to make sure that if one of us isn't here, we're getting that question and getting it handled right away, so we're ready to respond to you.
All right. So you have homework in front of you. Take some time to go through this. Make sure you get those questions to Paula, and then we can have continue the discussion at our meeting on October 3rd.
All right.
All right, so thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for your presentation earlier. And thank you again to all of the directors and everyone that helped put this together, but appreciate you keeping this status quo and making us mindful of doing the right thing and making good decisions and following, as you said, it's the roadmap to making sure we're paying attention to our mission and vision and all of that. So thank you, everyone, for being here. We are adjourned.